we have always worked hard to separate some of our yoga classes from some of our other more sensual based classes like tantra, or some of our other more recent offerings like the multi-orgasmic man.
In today's episode of Men of Yoga Off the Mat, we meet Victor from Naked Warrior Yoga. He's here to tell us what it's like to own a yoga studio for 20 years in naked yoga in the middle of West Hollywood and have a global empire for naked warriors all across the globe. So stay tuned. Here we go.
Welcome back to Off the Mat, everybody. My name is Will, and today I'm here with my co-host, Aaron. We have a special guest star, the owner of the legendary Naked Yoga Warrior out in West Hollywood. So without further ado, say hello, Mr. Victor.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for carving some time to join us today. I'm gonna just kick this off right here. When we decided we're gonna do season 2, I just thought that, man, you were on the wish list because we actually went and practiced at Naked Yoga Warrior in July. So I feel like this is not just a full circle moment, but like another doorway opening up. So it's nice to meet you.
You as well. Yeah, when you were here in July, unfortunately, I was in Hawaii and didn't get a chance to meet.
How unfortunate you were in Hawaii.
I know.
God, that's gotta suck,
Poor thing.
right? Well, first, before I'm gonna lather you with all the things I have enjoyed so far about like what you've created. I love your studio, by the way. Very cozy. Met Christopher, very warm, very friendly. I love the students. I love the vibe and energy. And my understanding also is that there's also pole that comes out occasionally. Is that true?
That's correct. We have 3 poles that we have introduced. Pole Warrior, which is our pole class, and that has been one of our most popular classes. Along with we have tantra classes, we have sensual movement and dance classes. We have what I've recently started is sound baths using 7 crystal chakra bowls.
Yes.
So we have all kinds of things happening at the studio all the time.
That's amazing. Do you mind taking us way back? And it's up to you how you want to connect the dots in terms of how yoga came to be. Yeah, give us a little bit or give us a lot of like how it all started for you until the point that, pandemic nearly took all of us out and how you rebuilt.
Sure, yeah. Well, my story begins in the year 2000 when I was living in Rome, Italy, and that's where I became certified to teach. I went to the Ashtanga Institute, so my background was in Ashtanga. And after I became a yoga teacher there, I moved back to the United States after 4 years, and I was immediately introduced to a group that was practicing at that time here in LA, and it was called Naked Yoga Los Angeles. And I quickly fell in with that group. And after just a couple of weeks of practicing with them, I became involved in teaching with them. It was my first teaching job. So my
Wow.
my first teaching job, and ever since, I have always been naked. I don't think that I've ever taught a yoga class
Wow.
outside of a few friends and family here and there where I was wearing clothing. So,
Wow.
yeah. So it shortly turned into me getting more involved with the group, and we moved out of where we were practicing in someone's apartment to us finding our own studio space. And then eventually, over the course of about a year or so, we turned that into having 3 yoga spaces throughout the LA and Long Beach area. So that was really exciting. We started just growing and growing, and that eventually led to holding retreats. And yeah, the rest, as they say, was history.
That's amazing. I want to go back to the moment that you started teaching. So like did was getting naked even like, oh my God, was there like an, you know what I mean? Was there a pause or like, oh, okay, is clothing optional or how was that like something that you just decided like, oh, I could do this?
So my original background, um, that got me introduced into all of it, I guess you could say, was I was modeling in Italy, and modeling eventually ended up with me being introduced to Shishi LaRue, who is a famous porn director.
Yes.
And I decided to take a leap, and I got involved in um, adult acting, as they say, to keep it PG. And I became one of Shishi LaRue's top models at the time. At one point, I was the third highest paid gay adult actor in the world. And I spent about three or 4 years working with Shishi LaRue. And that time kind of uh, overlapped the time that I had moved to LA and started practicing naked. So you could say that everything that I did during those years was pretty much without clothing.
That's
You're
amazing.
born this way. Born and bred. There we go.
Yes, it's always been part of my nature, I think. Even as a young child, I grew up in a very rural area, and I would disappear out into the woods and just strip off all my clothes and go running around in the forest through the trees as early as I can remember.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Victor, like when y'all got started in the naked space, was there, I'm just going to use this word lightly, was there a lot of competition or was that like a unique offering back in the day?
It was started predominantly by my friend and mentor Aaron Starr, who goes by
Yes.
Yogi Aaron
Sure.
now. He in those days he owned Hot Nude Yoga in New York City.
Hmm.
And he really is the one who turned it into, I mean, I'm sure there were men practicing in small groups around the world, but he's the first one that I have ever known of anyway that actually put that idea together, made it sort of mainstream, and actually got his own studio and had no, you know, it was no longer kind of an underground kind of thing. It was
Yeah, he brought to the mainstream.
Commercialized. Yeah.
crystallized. Yeah. And he was really a big influence on the previous owner of Naked Yoga Los Angeles before I took it over.
Okay.
And he has been a friend and mentor ever since. He's now the owner of the Blue Osa retreat in Costa Rica, where we've done several retreats with him.
That's fantastic. Folks, just so you know, we have Aaron Starr joining us at the end of October. So I love that this is how we're kicking off October and we'll be closing it with Aaron Starr. That's great.
Yeah, he's amazing. Uh, he he became sort of, I want to say, infamous for what he started. It led to him starting a book, and as I said, or writing a book, I should say. And he became my mentor. I always looked up to him and kind of emulated what he was doing in New York. He
Hmm.
actually was even there was a time in 2008 where I got injured and was no longer able to teach. And he actually became the kind of director of the yoga group here in Los Angeles as well. So he stepped in there, and it was not until 2017 when I um, opened up Naked Warrior Yoga again in Los Angeles.
Got it. Got it. That's amazing.
You
That's
said that you were the previous owner of Naked Yoga LA, and at what point do you take ownership in that story?
Right after we had opened our first studio, I was asked by the previous owner if I was interested in taking over the business. So it was around 2005, I believe.
Oh, that's very early in the process. Was that your first foray into like entrepreneurial small business owner?
Other than kind of managing my own modeling career and subsequent adult film career, I would say, yeah, it was the only time I had ever been introduced to really getting involved with marketing and promotion and the flip, the backside end of running a business.
Yeah, we've had a yoga studio for the last 14, going on 15 years. And I don't think it gets the credit that it deserves as far as the breadth of knowledge required to, it's marketing, it's customer facing, it's the classes themselves, it's business and doing your taxes. And, it's definitely a trial by fire to
Well,
jump
the
in.
irony is everybody thinks that as yoga professionals, we have a perfectly zen, perfectly balanced life. And I always laugh when people kind of say something like that to me because, yes, I do have what I think is the best job in the world, but it is still a job. It is still making everything happen on a day-to-day basis. And um, yeah, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. So real quick, Aaron, I don't know if you recall, but remember when I came back from my road trip with Coco, we came back from LA. Do you remember the postcard that I put on the dresser, Naked Warrior? That's Victor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to I've been wondering like how I know or met or seen Victor before. So he's been sitting on our dresser since July,
That sounds accurate.
I
right?
wasn't quite sure who Victor was. I thought that William had sent me a selfie or a picture of him and one of your instructors and Coco, and everybody in the picture is naked except for William. And I was like, why are you the only one wearing clothes? And he was like, oh, the instructors have to be naked, and or to something to that effect. And so I thought, oh, I've already seen this guy naked. I'm like, that was my only frame of reference.
Yeah. It
That's
was
why I'm co-host and not main host.
we did we took some photos after the class, and so I found that super interesting because most students, of course, like they're getting dressed and getting ready for their day. So I get dressed and I'm like, I gotta take a selfie. So I thought the teachers and Christopher, the owner, were gonna put their clothes on. They're like, no, let's go take a photo. And I'm like, that's kind of hot, you know. But yeah, so I kind of stuck out like, why are you wearing your shorts? I'm like, damn it, it was after class, man. But like, that's okay. I hid all of our privates for the post, so it looks like we were all naked.
Yeah,
I,
we do
I
the same thing sometimes, and we tread a fine line sometimes with the nudity and how much we can actually promote and post. We have
yeah.
say X where you can be fully naked and not have a problem, but then Instagram or Facebook or Threads or anything else, you run into problems with that. So
Yeah. So, one of the things that I want to ask you for us, obviously, we can share the blood, sweat, tears, and empathize with the challenges and the rewards of running a studio. Not that you have much to compare with, like being a naked yoga space, for instance. Like, did you find that to be a challenge in itself, putting it out, you know, like advertising, for instance, Instagram cracks down on too much sexual content or whatever the case may be. Do you find that running a naked program has its own challenges from just being a, average yoga studio?
it does. It does. Back in the early 2000s when we were just getting going, there wasn't really, an internet presence, anything like that. And most of the advertising stuff that we did was in the local periodicals, the local gay rags, that would post or post that would print those kinds of images. And finding studio space was an issue too. I remember going to many different places and asking if we could rent their studio space,
Mhm.
having them say, no, like, love what you do, but not really the vibe that we want to have in our space.
Yeah.
And so it took a while. It took some hunting to find the right spaces. Fast forward to 2017, and I feel that it's completely different.
Yeah.
Um, I think that just the words being put together, naked yoga, over the course of years has grown. And I think that a lot of that has to do with um, the internet and us being able to be able to um, grow and share in that way. In fact, it was the pandemic actually that helped us blow up. We became very popular um, through the pandemic.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, there's because people start to like have a little bit more courage of being seen because nobody can come to my house or nobody knows where I live. So you have complete anonymity if you choose to do so and still participate with a bunch of strangers that are like-minded in that regard. Um uh
Everybody got their internet courage to go ahead and be naked in a yoga class.
Yes, exactly. And not just people here in the States, but we broadened out to guys all over the world. We were suddenly not limited to a physical space. And to be quite honest with you, I fought going online tooth and nail. I'd never really approached teaching yoga in that respect before because I'm very hands-on, and not just because I get to touch naked men all day. It's because I really believe in the power of touch
yeah,
and being able to do adjustments and feel and see my students' bodies moving without the restrictions of clothing. And so it was a challenge to move into the digital space. I had, I think at that time, three teachers who were teaching our classes, but I was just handling stuff behind the scenes. Once we shut down our studio due to the pandemic, I just completely went behind the scenes and resisted teaching. But once I did, I realized that community still had just as much power and just as much to share, even though we were now all over the world and just being able to share like we are now.
right, right. And I love that you have the hybrid version of the classes still. Like I remember when Coco was there, like he had his camera on and it was a trip. It was like it's nice to see that we've made this yoga available online as well and not dropped off those folks after we went back in person, because we kind of like just grow the community, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that so much.
Thank you. We've been very proud of being able to hold hybrid classes still. Um, we have guys that have been with us from the very first class that we launched online. And our instructors, Richard and Daniele, who live in Italy, they have been our virtual instructors all of these years ever since.
Mhm. Have
Wow,
they
that's
been to the WeHo space yet?
They have not been to the WeHo space yet. We are planning a yoga teacher training,
Hmm.
and they are going to co-lead that with me in the future, but we haven't nailed down a date for that yet.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Just about all of our other instructors from different parts of the world have been to the studio space yet, but we haven't gotten those two. They're very popular in-demand yogi teachers and dancers and movement instructors. So they're often traveling the world. They just haven't gotten to LA yet.
Yeah, um, Aaron, I'll show you their website and their Instagram page. They are so internationally, can I say it? Every shot is panoramic and every photo is just, it glows, I also appreciate and love that they're in the wellness fitness space, and so they do other modalities. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Richard does like aquatic yoga and aquatic dance. It's really trippy. These guys are like really tapped into like, into something special.
Yeah, and Danielle is a ballet instructor and very serious yogi. They have what they do, like I got a glimpse into their process as they create their content when we were
Mhm,
together at our retreats in Costa Rica.
mhm.
And they really have the process down. They know their angles, they know just what looks good if it's in a jungle setting, if it's on the beach. They travel everywhere, Miami, Greece, Croatia, they're all over.
Oh yeah, they're very well versed in product placement, making sure that their product is just enough where people can't see it but want it. You know what I
Right,
mean? It's
right.
Yeah, it's
It
really
leaves you
a
wanting
mixture
more.
of what's that?
It leaves you wanting more.
Oh, absolutely. It's a combination of grace and allure. It's amazing. It's good stuff.
Does Naked Warrior Yoga have any co-ed classes, or is it all male?
It has always been all male. And because our studio space has been in West Hollywood, that has, been very important to us to hold space just for men. Because as you probably know, yoga in general has been a female dominated space.
Yes.
And in West Hollywood, we've seen what I call the straight gentrification of our neighborhood and of local businesses. I have been here over 20 years now, and I've watched businesses go from being gay owned to being corporation owned, and the overall feeling of the city of West Hollywood has changed a lot over the years. So it's been very important to us that we stay a queer gay space. We have had over the years, we've had requests to um, have co-ed classes or have classes for female identifying persons as well, but it's never coalesced into that yet. And I think one of the reasons is because women in general, I'm generalizing, but don't feel the draw or the desire to be naked in a communal space with other people the way that gay, bisexual, um, queer identifying men do.
Mhm.
There's something very unique about that. And I think that stretches back to, our ancestors when they would hold sweat lodges and, communal baths. I think that that has always been something that has been part of
Mm,
community.
right, right. Dating all the way back to the Grecian. Yes, right. Back in the day,
Right.
or Greek army. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So, how does the balance between sexuality and yoga kind of express in an all queer naked yoga studio?
It's a it's a fine balance sometimes. You know, we honor our traditional yoga background, and that includes, if you study like the eight limbs, there are what's the word?
References to like expressing more
References to
energy,
Like brahmacharya.
brahmacharya. Yeah.
yes, and sexual purity and
Mhm.
abstinence, things like that. We recognize those parts of the background, but we also accept and understand that Tantra and um, other modalities kind of blurred those lines before us. Men have been practicing naked yoga for as many years as yoga has been on the planet. Um, we have always worked hard to separate some of our yoga classes from some of our other more sensual based classes like Tantra, or some of our other more recent offerings like the multi-orgasmic man or sensual embodiment, and our new upcoming class, sensual rhythms, which invite that element of sexuality and community building and honestly just pure fun mixed in with that, because we know that especially tantric practitioners, that they've shown us the way that expressing yourself sexually can also be a way to enlightenment.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I'd realize also when I discovered yoga. There's a lot of information and material that is driven by male and female, and like, okay, it doesn't necessarily talk about homosexuals, but it's never in the room either. You know what I mean? And so I had a friend who recently visited India, and they said, "Did you know that homosexuality is illegal there in India?" And I'm like, and I was like blown away. I'm like, I thought that was the land of, expression and freedom and so on and so forth. And she went on to say, like, because of the British colonization, they applied some of those uh those values,
Yeah.
if those family values or whatnot. So it's not that pure, raw, like, everyone is invited kind of energy in India. And I thought that was fascinating. And so when I became a yoga teacher, I was really interested to say, all right, if yoga does say non-attachment, as a gay man, I did my best not to attach to a family unit of the male and the female and having kids and a white picket fence. It's like I have to go find my own way. And then once I find my own way, I do my best to share, say, hey, this is another way to like live your life. Yoga is a huge part of that discovery for me. And so now when Aaron and I discovered yoga together, we're like, there's something about yoga that's so needed also for gay men, because we don't belong in church and we get chastised for, being with same sex. The argument was because you don't reproduce, therefore you're not normal. So you can't use your sex, you don't have sexual for sex for reproduction, and so therefore it's a sin. When Aaron and I decided we were going to go for adoption, we met straight people who couldn't conceive and couldn't reproduce. And so for me, there's a sense of like, that argument is out the window, sir. It's not just gays who can't reproduce. There's also straight people who can't reproduce. So a little bit more acceptance for me.
And that was
Absolutely.
when we turned
Yeah.
from adoption and ran full speed and said, no, thank you. No
Yeah.
kids.
And so fast forward, here we are, with the privilege of having a studio, privilege of, offering teacher trainings. Like, we definitely put a little bit more of our own experience in terms of like, well, what does that really mean to detach and be open?
Well, we're having a completely
Yeah.
different queer experience than Victor because we are an openly gay owned business in straight suburbia. And so we're, some people's only gay reference, their only gay friend, or, a couple that they know, and we play a different role in, William and I are fairly liberal and live our life openly in front of people. We don't care what anybody thinks about how we live our life, or,
And I think that's amazing because you represent a community, and you are making you're forcing people to see you, and you're making yourself visible to the world. That's I honor you for doing that, because growing up in a small rural area, I can't even imagine actually what it would be like to try
Right.
and do what we do in a small conservative town, or being able to host the events that we host and make that happen, not just because of um the lack of gay people in a lot of you know the sheer numbers like we have in West Hollywood or Los Angeles, but simply because the more narrow-minded conservative thoughts that are traditionally associated with smaller communities like that too.
Yeah. When I want to also bring up your location. Y'all are like right almost across the woods, which is Woody Harrelson's dispensary.
That's correct. Yeah.
Not a bad space to be at, friend.
It's not. We're right in the middle of Boys Town, but far enough away from most of the bars.
Right, right.
Uh,
Which is another lucky you scenario. Like, 'cause the other side of West Hollywood is the Pink Pony Club, and then over here we have the Naked Warrior Yoga.
yeah, yeah, it's nice because we are able to still be kind of at ground zero, but be a little bit more removed from that particular scene as well. And that's because we love being kind of the counterbalance to the nightlife scene. I would love to see more of our community embrace going out on a Friday night and taking a naked yoga sound bath and followed by a yoga class, versus going out and having cocktails and meeting somebody in a bar. Um, we provide services like jock strap, speed dating, um, fun events where guys can meet each other outside of that bar scene.
Yeah, that's very cool. Aaron and I launched this thing called Men of Yoga during the pandemic, and it was a little dream gone big just recently. We just like most people, I'm sure, went online and see what can I do while I'm here. Aaron introduces me to TikTok, and I start gravitating to like, oh, I'll just make content. And I had no idea like how fun and how amazing of a good time you can have if you're comfortable just creating content. And he then said, "Oh, there's this OnlyFans thing." And I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" And so we started dabbling into OnlyFans, and I thought, well, how do we attract and or draw people to this site? Because it's not, no offense to sex employees out there, this was going to be a naked yoga site. So I thought, well, we have to go on the gram. And so on Instagram, our handle is OF Men of Yoga, OnlyFans Men of Yoga. And when we started, I'm like, how do you now sell this idea to the public saying, well, if it's only fans, now I'm just kind of like limiting and shrinking my demographic. So I said, screw it, just make it Men of Yoga. We'll post yoga here and then naked yoga on this platform. So it went from like 60 followers to like 6,000 followers in a matter of like 3, 4 years. And Aaron and I now want to take that Men of Yoga experience on the platforms and bring it in a brick mortar studio with the idea of like, let's get these boys out of the bars and give them a little bit more spiritual juice, something that they can hang on to that will serve them in the long run, for the rest of their lives, rather, you know. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, that's a big part of what we do. And here in Los Angeles, we're fortunate enough to have, spas and even sex clubs where people can go as alternatives to that bar scene as well. But what we do specifically within our walls, I think offers more of a connection and
Mhm.
offers more chance for people to truly get to know each other, because what we and what you've built as well is true community. It's not a bunch of strangers. The guys that practice with us, they come into our space and they actually get to know each other and they form relationships outside of the studio. And we have an app, a social app on our own platform, um, that is it's its own world. It's its whole other universe outside, because it has become a platform for guys to meet or um, to plan or whatever it is, outside of the studio walls.
Do you think that's because there's a boundary there set? It's not a sex club, or you don't get to go all the way, but it's you're able to express your sexuality in a controlled environment that forces them to seek out more intimacy in relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think that that is one of the things that people discover when they come to one of our classes, especially if they're coming to sensual embodiment or multi-orgasmic man, tantra classes. They are, they may walk in feeling very hesitant and nervous about being so open and vulnerable at that time. But usually by the end of that hour session, they've completely flipped the script and realized that this is powerful and it has meaning. It's not just being naked in a space together. There's something else happening there. And that's the power of yoga, whether you are aware of it or not. Yoga, when practiced, has that tendency to influence your life outside of just the physical practice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Those subtle energetic layers, and the discipline of yoga applies to all the layers of self, and allowing yourself structure to explore that balance in your life across the board, and socially, and spiritually, and mind body connection, and finding energy and shifting your energy in a new direction allows you the opportunity to find your most balanced, most vibrant, energetic self. And the concepts work whether you understand how they work or not. I can only imagine being in an environment where uh, your walls they're not forced to come down, but they are heavily encouraged, to liberate yourself from the chains that bind you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is kind of, we see guys coming at the idea of naked yoga from kind of two different approaches. Those who are really comfortable with their bodies and ready to be an exhibitionist and a voyeur, and those that other group of guys who might be coming into the studio feeling very nervous and never having explored themselves in a communal setting or a group setting before, and allowing themselves to share their sexuality and to have other people see them in this way. So it's really fascinating to me to see that group of men come into the studio a little wild-eyed and nervous, and then they become some of our most ardent, yogis and followers, because they feel safe and they feel connected in a way that they've never been able to express before.
It's really beautiful. How may I ask another question? So you said originally you did your original certification in Ashtanga. That, I imagine that was your primary practice going into teacher training. How has your teaching evolved after 24 years of teaching? I can't imagine you're running a 6-day a week Ashtanga naked Ashtanga program. Uh, what does being a yoga teacher for this long in this environment, how does that inform the experiences that you're creating for people?
I am pretty far away from my Ashtanga roots now, not just because it's been over 20 some odd years. My body has changed as I have aged, and I have introduced more other styles into my practice, to where I've really evolved my own kind of style. Ashtanga, as you know, is very regimented and kind of serious. That is not where I am today. We have yin classes, um, we have other instructors who teach a variety of modalities that all kind of uh, all kind of have that same background in physical movement, but also we're broadening, we're trying to bring more of the philosophical and the uh, mental benefits, I guess, for lack of a better word, to what we do through yoga.
That's really beautiful. I love to see the evolution. There's not too many people that stay in the game. It's usually a time in someone's life before they give up and go pursue money or family, or and to see career minded yogis that are evolving over time. And both William and I have spent a lot of time. I've been studying yoga therapy for many, many years, and William is evolved into a power and a yin teacher, the yin and the yang of the practice. And finding and supporting other people in the journey, as studio owners and businessmen, and as well as lifetime yogis. Teaching yoga in your 50s is, I don't know how old you are, but we're in our 50s. And
I'll be 50 this week.
oh, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
what an honor.
Hot. Filthy at 50.
That's
Yeah, I
right.
turned 50 last year. It's 50s is interesting so far. It's been, comes with a lot of aches. Being a 50-year-old yoga teacher, and the maintenance of the body becomes even more important than the actual workout itself. And
Absolutely. I love that you said that because that has informed my practice and my teaching as well. Um, I definitely couldn't do the things that I could do, 20 years ago in Ashtanga, but that also makes me more relatable because I can now reach a broader audience and I have more understanding of, because I've always only ever worked with men, I have a pretty uh, solid understanding of male anatomy and how the body moves through the ages.
Mhm.
that's awesome.
May I ask you a couple of, well, I'm going to ask if you can share some of your pro tips if anyone is out there looking to like maybe start uh, opening up a studio away from Mountain View and away from WeHo. Like, is there any pro tips in terms of like do's and don'ts? What would you say to somebody who's, looking into getting into the business?
I would say if it's your passion and if it's what drives you and what makes you get up in the morning, don't let the naysayers tell you differently. Stick with it as long as you can. I mean, of course, financial issues can come up, but in whatever capacity you can continue, even if it's hosting a weekly class in your apartment building, continue to do so because you're only going to grow just as we did. As I mentioned, we started in an apartment and we've grown to be the largest group of naked men in the world. Now, there's a lot of pitfalls, I think. But luckily, we live in a time where yoga has exploded. I'm old enough to remember a time when people thought yoga was akin to witchcraft and they didn't really understand what it was. And I've had family members say, "Oh, yoga, that's like very anti-Christian or different just different feelings about it." So I think that we're very lucky to have the internet and to have the exposure that we do. Um, yeah.
Very good. Aaron, do you have anything else on your Q&A list?
Anything else on my Q&A list? Nah, we talked about yoga. We talked about being naked and the different modalities. It's been very enlightening and a pleasure to meet you. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Before we wrap up though, Victor, tell us how you're going to bring 50 in.
Oh boy. Well, I'm busy preparing for our retreat to the Jungle Neighborhood with our friend Shelby in December. We have that retreat coming up December 15th to the 21st. I'm very busy putting that together. I've also been really busy immersing myself in sound healing and the therapy of the crystal bowls. So I'll probably be practicing those a lot and just enjoying the weather that we have here in LA and my time with my dogs. They're a big part of what I do outside of the studio. Um, but honestly, turning 50 hasn't been like a big milestone for me. It's been more of just kind of another turn of a page.
And I'm going to put your information for the retreat. Is it just basically going onto your website?
It is, yeah. It's the first thing you'll see actually if you go to our homepage, but then there's also the retreat page that people can click on as well.
Fantastic. I forgot to mention too, there's a huge community on Facebook for Men of Yoga, and we have like 3, 4 different private chats. And it doesn't matter what I call the chats, they all want to talk about naked yoga. So I'm going to make sure that I drop, because I know that y'all still doing the online programs.
Correct. Yeah, every day.
Okay, good. So I'll do that. So if there's
Anything else you want to promote while we're here?
The retreat, obviously, keep an eye out for our upcoming yoga teacher training as well. Shout out to all of my instructors across the world, Richard and Daniele in France, Coach Coco in Costa Rica, the guys here in LA. We have a new class coming up, as I might have said, a sensual rhythm, a new dance class. Always new things going on. So yeah.
Well, fantastic. Thank you again so much for carving time for us, Victor. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we chat. Like I've always expressed to you our desire to do some kind of Men of Yoga retreat in West Hollywood. And I'm sure I'll be reaching out to your people to book your studio for some practice time. So
Can't wait for that. I look
yeah,
forward to that. And thank you wholeheartedly to both of you as well for this opportunity and for everything that you do.
fantastic. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day, sir.
Thank you so much. You as well.
And happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
All right, dude, that's all for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, please remember to subscribe. And if you want to plug into the Men of Yoga community even more deeply, you can follow us on Instagram and or Facebook. Links are in the description. And also leave us some comments. Let us know what you liked about the episode, as well as what other juicy topics you'd like for us to open up and explore, because it all gets to be here. All right. So go have a great day on and off the mat, and hopefully we'll see you next time.